And there we go. So thank you all for coming, and thanks for everybody who's joining us today. And I want to, since we have 4 panelists, in the interest of time, I would like everybody to, for the 4 panelists to give their spiels. And then if we do have time, I would like to allow questions. If not, if we don't allow time, I'm going to ensure that all the attendees have the panelists' emails so you can follow up with any questions that they may have for you. I'm hoping that everybody on here will use this as a great resource and a great networking opportunity for our business students. So please treat this as such, because I think that our panelists and our alum will have a lot of great insight to share. So give me 1 second. Sorry, I'm finding my PowerPoint here. Should have had it already pulled up, but we had some other issues we had to deal with. So give me 1 second while I get it. Oh boy. Okay, thank you for your patience. So first, I'm going to introduce all of the panelists to begin with, and then we're going to start with Allison, go to Greg, Dave, and then Garrett. So Allison is a CSC 2000 alumni, a business administration major. She is currently a human resource business partner at Hypertherm, and it was while taking human resources classes that highlighted employment law at Colby Sawyer College that Allison first gained an interest in the world of HR. She participated in an internship that provided an overview of payroll, compensation and benefits, recruitment, training and development, and policies and procedures. The internship was beneficial as she was able to apply class materials to real life and made the decision to continue with an HR focus. She was able to find an opening quickly after graduation as a generalist and worked up to an HR health and safety manager until she decided to join Hypertherm, where she is now a human resource business partner. On a personal note, Allison lives in the Upper Valley and has just finished building her own house. Next up will be Greg Desgrossier. He's a 2013 business admin alum, and he is currently an implementation specialist in the engineering department at FedEx. Greg started his career in transportation at Amazon shortly after college. He then left Amazon to work in operations, consulting briefly before taking a management position at FedEx. Currently, he works on various projects within the company, including rolling out engineering programs, labor management programs, and working with specific processes to identify opportunities for improvement. Next, we welcome David Fleischman, who is a 2010 CSC alum in business admin. He has also earned an MBA at SNHU in 2018, and he is the Principal Chief Operations Officer at BBK Worldwide. David helps with the strategic direction and drives corporate growth for BBK Worldwide, a leader in clinical trial patient recruitment and engagement in the clinical R&D industry. As director of the Account Services Department, he oversees all aspects of campaign management and client relationships. As director of the Finance Department, he oversees all BBK's invoicing, pricing, and corporate budget needs. On a personal note, he is also the program director for Wolfpack Athletics, and a side project alongside his brother, David owns and operates a travel baseball program in the Westwood, Massachusetts area. A company in its third year that has seen growth year over year, starting from 1 team to now 4 teams, multiple clinics a year, and a partner of Nike Sports Camps. And finally, we have Garrett Husband, who is a CSC 2000 alum and has also earned his MBA from Plymouth State. Currently, Garrett is a VP Squad Leader, Executive Services, Foundational Capabilities at Fidelity Investments. After CSC, Garrett attended Plymouth State University to earn an MBA. He then spent a decade in analyst and program management roles split evenly between Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center and Massachusetts General Hospital. His experience at both hospitals led to an industry change and director level role at Fidelity in 2019. A recent promotion has provided him the opportunity to lead a squad enhancing product capabilities to support the highest valued workplace executives on Fidelity platforms. Personally, his wife, Marissa, and he moved out of the city of Boston earlier this year to Wilmington, Massachusetts, and are enjoying the transition to burb life, taking in everything their new area has to offer. And recreationally, he plays in multiple softball leagues and finds time to golf here and there with other fellow CSC alums. So I would like to start with Allison Echo. Allison, you have the floor.
Okay, and how much time, just so I can?
10 to 15 minutes, 10 minutes or so, if that works.
Okay. Yep, perfect. So thank you for that introduction. So I started working as an intern in HR my sophomore and my junior year. And I also had another internship as well in marketing and administrative. So I try to go for a different type of organization and position to try to see what type of opportunities would be best for me. I was able to find that HR really was something that I was interested in, and that changed over the years as well for what I might want to target. You can specialize with human resources, or you can remain in a generalized function, which is where I did end up actually going. Initially, I was thinking about becoming specialized, and I really wasn't unsure at that point in time of where I'd want to go from whether it was training, organizational development, or different aspects there. So there was a lot of back and forth, but through my internship and through the classes, I was able to actually also get a mentor outside. And through that, I was able to work with her through understanding different aspects of human resources, understanding how the classes I was actually having and being able to take that into the workforce. And so it was really interesting to be able to get there. And then she also actually helped me get my first position outside with the Timken company. So it was a very large publicly traded company, and I became an HR generalist at the local facility there in Lebanon, New Hampshire. And I started there. I worked for the company itself for about 7 years or just thereunder. And during my time there, I worked up, as she stated, to the HR health and safety manager. And I was the manager of that location, but also I had a few other facilities that reported up into me dotted line, where we were able to help streamline policies and procedures. And so I was able to actually travel as well. So that was pretty fascinating to learn about different types of the organization. What was really fascinating for me, especially when I first started, the first 2 years, is how much I was able to apply the knowledge from college. And even when it was coming to compensation, learning about different grade structures and what that entailed, and being able to see how it actually applied in the workforce. For benefits, trying to understand those details, and then how to actually be part of the open enrollment process for an employer. And I was able to provide all of having that base knowledge, I would say significantly improved my career. But outside of just the HR functions, finance was actually one of the biggest helps as well, which I can't say it's one of my personal favorites for classes, but being a partner with the finance partners as part of the organization and understanding from a finance perspective of what's happening and what they're looking at. The fields I've been in has been primarily manufacturing based and also engineering based. And so part of that too is making sure we're taking a look at a lot of financials, especially for a publicly traded company. So I learned a lot from that process as well. And then a lot from an operations management perspective as well, because of the manufacturing processes. I learned a lot as well from a lean manufacturing and what goes into that. And that's still a learning process of problem solving processes that companies will use for that. But that's helped provide a large basis for where I am today, and I decided to switch companies. So I was working for Timken, and there was a lot just personally that from a publicly traded company you're going to encounter, which I think every company you're going to have its pros and cons. But what was really fascinating is trying to understand what shareholders look for, and actually hearing those types of conversations and those choices that are made. And I ended up doing about 10 layoffs during my time there. And for me, that was just something that was very difficult. And while that was one of their levers on how to try to utilize the workforce differently, especially when there are ups and downs, it was pretty challenging in those circumstances. So the company I'm at now with Hypertherm, we have a no layoff philosophy, which is pretty different. So we actually look at different challenges of how to redeploy basically associates over to different positions. So the challenges at this type of company, it's also employee owned. So it's a very different type of culture in respect to that. So I wanted to change it because of those types of values. And we've been able to work through a lot from an organizational development and structure standpoint to make sure we do also practice lean. So that's also part of it. And that can also be a challenge just from the amount of people that we're willing to hire because of the no layoff philosophy as well. So that's a lot of different aspects of it. I'm still as a human resources business partner. It's more of a generalist function. So I'm dealing with talent management, organizational development, strategy and structure. There's still the associate relations, compensation, recruitment aspects of it. So there's a lot that changes day to day, week to week, and then even throughout the year, just based off of calendars. So with year end coming up, we'll have year end reflections and processes there. So there's a lot of challenges as well from a time management perspective that you'll need to kind of learn and process, and what suits you, and based off of kind of the calendar for the year based off of each employer. But it's been very fascinating trying to learn different aspects of it, and then also just the people that you also encounter has been a lot of fun, because there's a lot of different personalities that you're going to encounter in the workplace, which can be really rewarding. So if you're working on a performance issue, is trying to understand where someone is, what their learning style is, and just what their natural insight might be in self-awareness and working through those challenges. So it's a lot from that side, but then also making sure that we're trying to then partner with a business and learning and being and actually understanding the business to make sure we're setting up the organizational structure, and we're setting up training and development to make sure that we're ready for the future. So I'm trying to rush because I want to make sure I give enough time. So let me know how much time I extra have, or if there's topics you want me to cover.
Thank you, Allison. It sounds like you wear a ton of different hats in your job, and pull from a lot of different, you know, resources and places that you've learned. So I appreciate that insight. I think we will move on to Greg at this point. And just anybody on or in the class here have any questions, go ahead and let me know or type them in the chat. Okay, go ahead, Greg.
Thank you. Like we said, I'm Greg Grosse, a brief introduction. I work for FedEx, but I started my career at Amazon. And that was shortly after graduation. I actually started in the truck. I thought I wanted to do real estate investment and development. I moved back to my hometown and the commercial real estate market collapsed, and I found a job working in a warehouse at Amazon. Quickly moved my way up to a management position there. It's a great company. A lot of my friends still have a lot of great friends there. I learned a lot, and I left because I thought I wanted to do operations consulting. And you really don't know what you don't know until you do it. So I was working operations consulting. Really wasn't for me. So I found another job with, I applied to a bunch of other companies I admired, and one of which was FedEx. So I started my career at FedEx as a manager. What I really like about working at FedEx and what is interesting to me is just the amount that you end up working with other teams. We really believe in a collaborative environment and working with disciplines that, teams that may be generally outside of your purview, which is why the liberal education aspect of Colby Sawyer has really been helpful in my career. You start by understanding different perspectives. You learn that, maybe something that you didn't have an interest, you learn how to get value from something that you didn't have interest in before. So I think that's great. And if I had to say, two things that as people that maybe outside the transportation industry or outside the logistics industry, we have a lot more attention now than we ever have in the past. And if I had, two things to say, you have to be really willing to be flexible and dynamic, because you're going to have really unique challenges every day. And then really seek to understand the world around you. I mean, I can't begin to talk about how, we've been doing things the same way for a very long time. And, this year we've had to completely reconfigure supply chains. We had to find new methods to procure containers. There's simple things like that you take for granted. We really, really need to be flexible and willing to think outside the box and maybe learn how to reach out to people that you normally, you find partners that normally wouldn't be your partners. So I think that's really interesting about this past year. So.
Great, thanks so much, Greg. Some things that I took from that I found interesting were, and I think that students should be aware of this, is that you may not find your perfect fit right away when you start a job. And you made mention of that, like, well, I started here, but it really wasn't the great fit. So, you learn along the way. So I think that's really important to communicate to students that, not going to land that perfect job maybe right outside of college, but you find what the good fit is. And then like the plug for lib education, that was great. And I think that, collaborating and flexibility are super important, soft skills to have. Students are learning all about their business skills and, how to conduct a business, but first and foremost, you're dealing with people. So I think having those soft skills are super important. So I appreciate that plug and the whole innovative thinking idea. So thank you very much, Greg. And I'd like to move on to Dave Fleischman, please.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having me, first off. Secondly, so I pretty much started at BBK Worldwide almost right out of college. I had interned and worked a little bit at a couple, I think the company was actually called Celebrity Marketing, but it was for players in the Boston area. We did a lot of charity events and we did a lot of other promotional events for some of these players, and started out there. And I think over time realized, meeting these players and being around them wasn't as much as it was all cracked up to be, and ended up kind of, coming home at night and not really, enjoying putting the game on anymore. And I think another passion of mine that I've kind of always had was in the healthcare industry. Not a doctor, not a nurse, but still kind of have that kind of altruistic, sense about what I can help do. And BBK Worldwide, being in the clinical trial industry, trying to assist with patients who are suffering from any numerous types of illnesses and bringing new drugs to the market that may help them, was a good landing spot for me, and something that I've been there ever since. I think I'm on like 14 or whatever years there now, whatever it is, 13. So, I started there as kind of the account operations specialist, making sure trains were running on time and, could keep a schedule very well, and found myself being very organized. And, I think that was also something that I tried to take away as I was at Colby Sawyer is, not every professor is going to be for you, and not every class is going to be for you, but what are the best parts that you take out of it? If there's certain attributes from a professor that really hit home with you and allow you to learn at your best, those are maybe things and types of environments that you may want to put yourself in as you're interviewing for positions. And so, what I really found is that, I'm not the best writer, but I am very organized. And that's why a project management position was really good for me. I excelled there, moved up to more of an account executive there. And then from there, oversaw all of the accounts at the agency. And then now got promoted to Chief Operations Officer, where I oversee not just all the accounts, but also a lot of the financial aspects to the business that we run today. I would say the courses that I took stick with me every single day. I still have in my office, not at home here, but at the office, my business law book, my finance book, my organizational behavior and book. Those were three not worth giving back for the cash, I would say. And so making sure that, I reference those things all the time. A lot of those principles of GAAP and things that you learn is still what I, go through on a daily basis when trying to make sure our balance sheet looks accurate and our P&Ls and our statements are all looking, good, and we're hitting goals every month from a financial standpoint. So I would say a lot of those courses were good for me. I think one of the biggest things, the other biggest thing probably took out of Colby Sawyer too was one, finding a good roommate. I don't know if, underclassmen who are there, find a good roommate. My freshman year didn't have, I would say, the best roommate, and, my grades and also my work ethic suffered from that, and I really transformed that from my sophomore year on and found a great roommate who had a very strong work ethic, but also had good interests. And so that was very positive for me. And I think the other part are the airline industry. I don't know if they're still doing that as a course. The senior course, the airline industry was great. One of the biggest learning experiences, yes, not a real company itself, but those are real departments. Those are real things that you have to go through. And so, it was a very good learning experience, allowed me to present. I would highly recommend if I don't know, with COVID and stuff, if you're still doing a presentation on senior day, I would recommend being the team that presents on senior day, because you want to put yourself in those those points where there's a little more pressure on you and you can kind of see how you perform and get more experience that way. And then, I think the other big things that I took away, Colby Sawyer, I did, like I said, I got a better roommate, but it also, after getting some work in me, also challenged myself to go get my MBA to see how much better I could do. Actually finished a full grade and a half point above where I was at Colby Sawyer. And I take all the lessons that I learned from Colby Sawyer from the work and brought them to that, and would highly recommend that to those as they're going through their journey. The last things maybe I would kind of say is, one, when I interview people or new people start for me, I think what they think about is, how do I make an impact right away? How am I seen? How do I shine right away? That's very tough to do. In an organization, you need to learn the systems, you need to learn the ideologies, you need to learn, what you're selling or what you're doing there. And so that takes time. I think the biggest things that you can bring to those environments is a positive energy to all the meetings that you attend, being, asking questions, taking notes, and really bringing a positive energy. There are people probably at the company that you may work for that may be there for 12 to 14 years and are stale in certain meetings. Your positive energy, just by doing that, raises that meeting right away. And then the last thing I'll say, a big book for me that I really loved, Harvard Business Review, The Best of Emotional Intelligence, was one of the best books that was very helpful for me as I was going through my business journey. But that's what I got for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. Just a couple of things that I took from what you were saying. I like to kind of recap a little bit. Well, first of all, the industry you're working in is super timely right now because of all the clinical trials that are going on. So it must be very interesting. That was just a comment. And then I like the fact that you are encouraging the students to take the best parts from the classes. Maybe not everything in one class or, whatever, but there is something to be gained from each class. Whatever it is, it's something positive can come out of it. And I feel like that was kind of the theme throughout, like create that positive energy, have a support system. I do like that idea. I think everybody needs a support system. And so I have a question for you. The capstone for the airline industry, that's still something the students do. And do you draw from that now? Like the experience that you had then, would you draw from it now?
Definitely. I still remember some of the questions I was asked that day. But yes, without a doubt, I think it was, again, I use that as I volunteered my team to present on the senior day, to be in front of everybody, because I wanted to push us to have that experience and to kind of get that. And it's tough, it's in front of people, but I think it was really great for all of us. And after we did, everyone was really happy that we had it that day. So I take from that every single day.
Great. Well, that's encouraging because these guys still have it coming. So
Good.
Thanks so much, Dave. We'll move on to Garrett, husband.
Thanks, Noel. Appreciate the invite today. Just a quick, I'll go through my kind of employment history. I think I have the longest of the four panelists here, so it'll take just a second. I actually started my journey for work even before college. So I started a tournament. I started just putting together this random basketball tournament way back when, my local gym, and there wasn't anything. We were looking for revenue for a local town deal with the recreation department, and I said, you know what, why don't we do a holiday tournament between Christmas and New Year's? Oh, bingo, let's do that. So we had something like 30 teams at this gym. That was back in 2003. And that tournament's still running today, which is pretty cool. But that started way back prior to starting at Colby Sawyer. So my journey kind of started before that. And then during college was very involved in athletics in multiple roles, whether taking some work study positions in athletics, I think two different roles, plus basketball manager, did a bunch of things, and was on the baseball team for a brief period as well. So busy during school. One of the things I really emphasized while at Colby Sawyer was really taking the time and energy to be very careful where I wanted to do my internship, and really researched and spent the time, and ended up on a national search for an intern in Arizona, and ended up with that role and spent the summer out there between my junior and senior year. So practical experience, I don't know if I can stress this enough, is probably the greatest thing that you can possibly take. So the folks that learn stuff from the classroom, applying it practically while you're in school, so that when you get out, very, very, very critical to long-term success is what I would say. After school, I went right immediately, 2 days after graduation, was working at a gym, but also started my MBA. So I was working full-time and going to school full-time for the following couple of years, and then flipped into healthcare. So after I finished my MBA, ended up in a financial analyst role at Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center, was there in that capacity, a couple different titles for about 5 years. Ended up moving down to Boston after that, and within a year was flipped from an operations analyst role into a manager of operations and analytics. So spent 10 years in healthcare overall, then said, why don't I try something different, and went over to the financial services industry. By the way, switching industries can be a little scary. It can be daunting to go from one area to another. You've built over the course of time all this knowledge over the course of that 10 years, and so that leap can be a little scary. But did it anyway with financial services. Knew nothing. By the way, when you go from one organization in healthcare, which uses a lot of acronyms, to another organization in financial services that uses a whole nother set of acronyms, it's literally like speaking different languages. So, ask a lot of questions, get yourself prepared with whatever you can ahead of meetings, ask questions before that meeting. One of the things I noticed professionally, so folks don't always throw agendas on a meeting invite. So, something goes on your calendar, don't be afraid to ask those questions and get ahead of it. And therefore you can be an active participant in those meetings. And one of the classes I would say, despite not being a business major, by the way, I was a business minor, did take that business communications course. I don't know if it's still 3 hours on I believe it's a Monday afternoon. I remember that fondly. And brevity in your business communications. I can tell you that attention to detail, folks are not going to read a long email from anybody. I promise you that. So keep it as brief as you can. There's a lot going on. And if you need to have more than a paragraph worth of content, probably worth a brief conversation. And as far as interviews and getting into a place like a Fidelity, a lot of behavioral interviewing. So asking you situational questions. How would you handle, you're presented with a business problem, how would you handle this type of thing? And provide very detailed examples. And some of that's from experience, and some of that you can gain from your education as well. So those are some of the things I would take away in terms of my recommendations. In my role at Fidelity, we work with the highest value participants across the, I'm going to say PWI platform. There's an acronym for you: personal and workplace investing. So basically, you have a workplace plan. I don't know who Colby Sawyer has, but there's an opportunity right there for your 401k plans, HSAs, so on and so forth. Fidelity is what you would call a record keeper for those particular items, stock plans. There's a whole bunch of workplace participants that are teed up from those companies. And at the top of the house, there are a lot of executives, a lot of people with high value, high complexity needs to understand their own benefits, and their and their planning considerations as a result. So we've created a product offering that will allow folks who have those complex needs a specific planner who knows their benefits inside and out. So it touches on a little bit of what Allison said. We'll have a Hypertherm, use Hypertherm as an example. Hypertherm has has benefits with Fidelity. I'm just making it up. They may or may not. But if they did, they'd have potentially an executive services representative who would help them and their participants, their high-level participants, with their planning needs. And the entire point of that is to optimize their benefits and keep them at their current employers from the sponsor perspective, the employer perspective. So hopefully that kind of concludes what I had, Noelle.
Super. Thank you, Garrett. And again, some takeaways from yours. I appreciated the practical experience plug. Internships are super important, of course, and the practical application that they allow students, and get that experience. So, and then some really great advice that I felt like you gave was ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, right? And get clarification. Brevity. That is super important, I think, especially for people in the business sector, but even when you're communicating with this generation, brevity is key, that what's the acronym TLTR, too long to read, right? So they're not going to read it, right, if it's too long. So I think that was an important piece, a simple, easy, important piece of advice. And also the fact you brought up interviewing and like how a lot of interviewing is behavioral questions. It's not, they don't expect you to know the industry right off the bat, but how will you handle yourself in certain situations? And when we do mock interviews here, actually, we focus on the behavioral because we don't know what the organizations are going to ask, but we do know that there are going to be some behavioral questions in there. So that's really great. So I appreciate all of you taking the time to be here. I am going to allow some questions. I think, I gotta enable the chat, I think, for those that are in there. And anybody in the class that has a question, feel free. If not, I have a few questions for you. So while people are thinking, oh, we have one here, Kaylin.
COVID started preparing them well enough as they first started out of college, entering the workforce.
Okay. The question was, do you feel like Colby Sawyer prepared you right out of college to go into the workforce? And that can be for any of you.
What, Allie?
I would say to the best of their ability. I don't know if anyone can really prepare you fully to entering the workforce and understanding what career you're going to go for. I would say I felt pretty good with some of that base knowledge from a business standpoint to be able to go into, but there's so much that you'll work through. And I think I grew a lot in the first few years of understanding of what I was looking for from an employer, what I was searching for from my own career as well in my own development. So there's a lot that I would say in the first 1 to 3 years, you're still kind of working through and still trying to work on, and that will kind of lead you there. But it helped me significantly, at least from a base perspective.
Right. Does that answer your question, Kevin? It says yes. Thank you. Nothing in the chat just yet. So I'm going to start off. Does anybody? Oh, Jonathan.
Yes, I have a question. I'm a faculty member with the Business Administration Department, and as some of the guest speakers may know, we're starting our MBA program this year, and I was wondering if any of the speakers had any advice they'd like to give specifically to the master's students.
Yeah, I mean, I can start, Gary. You can whatever. You can go after that. Yeah, I think for those who have, I don't know if they're just a fifth year, if they're coming right out of graduation and they're coming in. Yeah, I think I I think you're going to have to build a lot on your internship experience. I think a lot of that is also making sure, I think research to me would probably be one of the biggest things you do, taking what you are learning in your MBA classroom and seeing how is that then impacted within the environment, because you're not fully within the employee marketplace yet. You're coming right still from school. I think those themes and motifs kind of still would be something that I would say, okay, how am I taking this? And then pick a company and say to yourself, okay, how does that really impact what they do and what they're doing? And try to put yourself maybe within one of those companies and see how those things interact. Garrett, I don't know if you have anything different.
I think that's a pretty good summation, Dave. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I will say, because I finished my MBA as well a few years back. From a time management perspective, if you're going to be getting it while you're working, can be very difficult. So you're going to have to get in a good rhythm for that. So good luck.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any online, that's what I did. I did a lot of mine online, and it was a lot easier because I was working still full time during that. And so I think if you're not, then this is a really good chance to ask a lot of questions.
So sleep was optional for me too. So if you have to make that choice, be deliberate about it and decide whether or not you want to do it full time, in person, do something on the side. It is a significant commitment.
Thank you.
So for all of you here, do your organizations host internships or entry-level opportunities for those that haven't earned an MBA yet?
I mean, we do. Yeah, go for it, Greg.
Yeah, so right now we started doing a lot of outreach to schools. I work with a few other colleges and universities right now, helping connect students, answer the students' questions that they might have if they're looking to get into a field in supply chain management. A lot of colleges and universities don't cover supply chain management in their undergraduate program, and we're really pushing that they should. It's very often seen as an MBA level discipline, and what we see as an industry is what we need right now are students that are coming out of college, understand how a supply chain works, understand how to manage a process, understands how to break down each component of a process, and kind of reverse engineer everything in every step of a supply chain. In order to do that, you need to have a general understanding of engineering and a general understanding of supply chain management. You don't necessarily need that MBA level knowledge yet. It's great, it's important. However, what we see is when we're trying to hire kids, recruit from universities, is we're not seeing people without an understanding of supply chain management at all. And it's a problem. It's a problem for our customers. It's a problem for our business. And if any students have any questions about supply chain management, what they can do to learn about it or take advantage of opportunities in college, please feel free to reach out to me. But the number one thing that I think schools do, and I think it's my understanding Colby is starting to do this more, is to start teaching supply chain management entry, just with a broad stroke, and a little bit of, having in an operations management class, or really dive a little bit into operations engineering, and just understand what that means, how an organization engineers their systems. And a lot of business students, like I'm not an engineer, but I manage engineers. So I don't necessarily need to know everything that they know, but I need to have an understanding of a certain level of understanding of what's going on, how they, you know, how they come to conclusions, and tie that into the business. So that's kind of one thing. And just diving into, I just see this note in the chat, general hiring practices. So I've seen, but from working with customers and working internally, hiring, interviewing, organizations, FedEx especially, is starting to rethink how we do our hiring. We used to really firmly believe in developing from the inside and promoting management from within. We have a lot of managers here that started out as package handlers, which is great. You know, I'm a huge, you know, that's the path I took at Amazon, so I'm a huge proponent of that. But I do think it's important that you bring knowledge from the outside. The best practice to get your foot in the door at any organization is to be willing to understand what the most entry-level position does, and really want to figure out how to make the most entry-level employee's job easier, and have the most entry-level employee create more value. If a candidate comes in and sits down and says, you know, I want to help package handlers, your people that you're paying, you know, a few years ago, $9 an hour. How can I create more value for them? How can I help them create more value for the firm? That's the candidate that we're going to explore. So it's always be thinking, how can I add value to this organization? And oftentimes that's by looking at the low-hanging fruit, looking at the base where you have the most opportunity for improvement, where you have the most people engaging in a process, in my case. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I can be kind of brief for Fidelity. Fidelity, yes, we offer undergrad internships. We offer graduate internships. I believe they're both paid, and there may be some unpaid opportunities as well, generally in the summer. And there are opportunities that float in as a result of those internships, or sometimes if you didn't have an internship, and there's entry-level roles from all over the organization. And we intend to have a spectrum of both tenured and newer associates at the firm.
You can go, Allie, if you want. You guys.
Okay, yeah, it's very similar. A lot of internships and a lot of different functions. So primarily engineering based, but outside of that, we have payroll, other finance opportunities, IT, software, operations management, lean, and a lot of other functions. It is a great opportunity to get into an organization if that is something. We've hired multiple engineers, especially I've seen, just because that's the area I support primarily, where we've hired them full-time after. And for hiring practices, we hire internal and external. It does also depend on what we have available for succession planning inside. So at times we will definitely just post it externally for that. And I know as mentioned before about behavioral-based interviewing, it's a big push for me as well. I would definitely recommend practicing that as much as possible, because that is one of the primary ways from my whole 10 plus years in recruiting that I've been seeing. That is a big push. So I definitely recommend that.
Yeah, we do internships. We hire people right out of college, MBA, no MBA. It doesn't matter to me. Honestly, I'm really just looking for a fit. And how are you going to fit within the organization? What's your work ethic like? You know, how organized are you? How much are you willing? You know, what are you looking to get out of it? It's really more about fit for me than kind of necessarily what your major was or any of that. A lot of people in terms of hiring practices, one, project management for a lot of the people I hire, a lot of our finance reps, there's not as much turnover, but a lot of project management is a more high turnover position just in general. And so what actually happens is more people get plucked from my group to go into different groups within the agency because a project manager really touches many different parts of the organization. You manage, with our, we run like an advertising agency. So, you touch our website team, our app team, our media team, our design team. So you get to know all the different resources within the agency. And from there, we'd rather not lose a good employee, maybe because they're a little tough done with project management. If you have another interest and like being at BBK and, we like having you, we'd rather not lose a good employee and find something that's good for you that you want to go into.
Excellent. Thank you. Great question, Jen. I appreciate that. And just really quickly, if anybody wants to answer, just have mentors played a role in your career? And would you be willing to be one, not necessarily a mentor, but at least a networking resource for our students?
I can kick off here. Network, I can't stress enough how important a network is. So I can tell you that outside of the walls of Colby Sawyer, there are networking events for alumni. There are other business connection events. Take advantage of any of those opportunities that you can, and those will open doors regardless of really any of your experience. That you'll have conversations, build relationships that will help lift you in another direction. Example being, there are roughly, I didn't use this in my last answer, but there are roughly 1,000 interns every year at Fidelity Investments. And a lot of those tend to be family members or folks that have already networked through BC, local schools around here. So the more that someone like me, for example, who is in the organization from a different background, different school, help you in connecting to an organization like Fidelity, yes, reach out, do those things, build your network broadly. As in many industries, many areas, do what you can.
I would just echo that. Yeah, I think he said it well, for sure. The one question that was in the chat was just about career development, I guess, development advice that you would share. Yeah, working long hours. I think, yeah, your body matters is what I would say. It's a lot different as, maybe a Thursday night at Colby Sawyer versus kind of really in real life. Your body matters. If you're not able to get up and work the next day, that's your livelihood. And so that's kind of one of the biggest things that I think, I either talk to new people about or who get hired or was a big thing that, I learned especially is that your body matters. You need to be ready to work each day. Your boss is not going to give you, too much leeway on some of that stuff, depending. And so I would just say that really treat your body well and make sure you're able to work. That's,
That's sage advice for sure. Be in good shape for the next day.
And setting strong boundaries, I'd say. So I looking at this, topics revolving around office culture, stressful work, set boundaries for yourself. It's law firms might have a culture of working till midnight. You don't have to have that mindset necessarily. You set your own boundaries, figure out what works for you, and stick to it, get to a schedule, maybe work out before, after, do whatever you want to do in that space. But set those boundaries and make that regimen for yourself.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that a little bit. One thing that is important to understand is understand the industry that you're going into as well a little bit. For example, boundaries are important, but also sometimes it's not practical. I'll give you an example. Like the beginning of the pandemic, unfortunately, we were working 60 to 80-hour weeks every week, but we were severely understaffed. We had a ton of volume. We couldn't hire managers fast enough. We couldn't hire package handlers fast enough. You had senior leadership even on the dock, you know, helping out, loading, unloading. You know, sometimes being a leader is making that sacrifice and understanding that, you know, to get the job done, you might have to do a little extra, right? And I mean, and sometimes it's, you know, you have to knock down those barriers. You know, I understand you need to have time for yourself, personal time for your personal life, but also at the same time, there are going to be instances in your career that you either decide, am I going to do this or I'm not? I have a lot of colleagues that chose, and it's fine, there's nothing wrong with them saying, hey, I can't work an 80-hour week every 3 months. And that's completely fine, that's completely respectable. But just also keep in mind that depending on where you go and what you want to do, that might be a part of your life every 2 years. So just keep that in mind. Or Christmas time for some industries, tax season for financial services. You know, you're going to have these periods of time where you are going to have to sacrifice, and that's part of work-life balance too, right? Preparing for that, understanding that you're going to have to give your employer a little more time, and you're going to have to take care of your body more, you know, piggybacking off of you can't go out with your friends or stay out late. You know, you're really, the older you get, the really you're gonna feel that. So just that's my 2 cents.
Excellent. And Allison, I don't want to deprive you of an opportunity. So if you want to expand on what you wrote in here, that would be fine.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so some of it's just repetitive, so I'll try to be short on that. But the work-life balance, at least for me, was very difficult. It was very easy to get sucked into work and work 12 to 16 hours a day. And because after a while, it was exhausting and it takes a toll on you, and you can't enjoy life as what we're here for as well. So, and it wasn't the part where I was really being challenged from a work perspective either. It's just the workload itself. So for me, what I decided to do was actually change the company and change a little bit of transition. So I went and I was technically, I guess it would be a demotion, but for me, having that work-life balance and having that picture of what I can do differently in my life was a bigger and better option for me. And it worked out. I'm an individual contributor, but I love it. So, and I'm still able to work with multiple teams. And I think for me, that was one of the best moves. And it's still something occasionally I need to check myself on because I think, again, I can kind of get sucked into the work. But being able to have that balance, and I also recognize there are times where we just went through operating plans where we're outlining our goals for next year. So that leads to a lot of time and things, but okay, that's a month for every team that I support, and then I'm done. And then it's year end. So you have those ups and downs, and you'll get into a better rhythm once you're into the organization. But it's part of the culture, and that's where you'll start to actually understand that once you're in the workplace a little bit more.
Great. Thank you so much. This was all really insightful, informative information that I hope our students will take to heart. This is recorded, so they will have that as a resource. And as well, I would like to send out to our attendees your contact information from all our panelists, if that's okay, so they can start networking. And I really appreciate all of our panelists' time. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And we just, on behalf of the Harrington Center, we appreciate everyone's time tonight. Have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.